They will tell you this story as one of triumph. They will speak of Jingo, the farmer who outsmarted drought, the man whose strange methods saved thousands when the sky forgot to rain. They will tell you about the trucks that lined his fields, about the city that knelt in gratitude, about the harvest that rose like a miracle from cracked earth. They will carve his name into stone. They will call him wise. They will call him hero. But they will not tell you what it cost him. They will not tell you that the same season the land turned green, his house turned hollow. They will not tell you about the daughter who asked one final question, or the grain poured onto a grave beneath a mango tree. Because some victories feed the world and starve the man who won them. They called Jingo the leaf farmer, and they said it loud enough for the wind to carry. In the late afternoon heat, he knelt on his plot like a man praying, pressing dry leaves over cracked soil to protect what little moisture still hid beneath. His torn earth-brown shirt clung to his shoulders. Dust lived in every seam. Beyond the farm line, men leaned on hoes and laughed. Jingo, one shouted, will leaves feed your house? Another spat into the dust. Let him talk to the ground. Maybe it will answer. Jingo didn't rise. His deep-set eyes stayed on the soil, intense, calculating, like he was listening to a secret the village refused to hear. You people laugh, he said softly, voice dry as harmattan. But the earth remembers kindness. They laughed harder, and still, he covered the soil, slowly, stubbornly, like tomorrow depended on it. That night, the hut did not sleep. The wind slipped through the cracked walls and carried dust onto the floor where bowls once held grain. The oil lamp trembled as if even light was uncertain. Nala lay on her woven mat, her head wrapped slightly loose, her breath shallow but steady for now. Cato sat nearby, back against the wall, a cloth in his hand, fighting the cough that refused to leave him. Amara stirred a pot that held almost nothing. Is there enough? Cato asked quietly. There is, she answered. There wasn't. Darren tilted his head toward the silence. The bowls sound empty tonight. Jingo stood near the doorway, shoulders curved inward, listening to the house breathe. It will rain, he said. No one answered. Outside, the sky was clear. By morning, the market felt smaller. Stalls that once held yam and cassava now displayed only dust and apology. Women argued over handfuls of dried pepper as if they were jewels. A man shouted that prices would rise again by sunset. Jingo walked slowly past the empty baskets. Your strange leaves growing yet? Someone mocked. He did not respond. Another voice muttered, a man who farms differently will starve differently. Jingo stopped at one stall and opened his palm to reveal 2 worn coins. The trader shook his head. This buys nothing now. Behind him, Amara stood quietly, her fingers gripping the edge of her dress. Father, she whispered, let's go. The sky above the market was wide and merciless, and the wind carried no scent of rain. The cough returned before sunset. Cato tried to hide it at first. He turned his face toward the wall and pressed the cloth against his mouth. But when the sound tore through him, it shook the hut like distant thunder. Amara rushed to his side. I'm fine, he insisted, though his voice trembled. You are not, she replied softly. Darren lifted his head. Your breath is thinner. Cato attempted to stand. His knees betrayed him. He staggered once, then dropped hard onto the floor. Jingo crossed the room in 2 strides and lifted him. For a moment, father and son locked eyes. In Cato's gaze was shame. In Jingo's was fear. Outside, the wind scraped across the roof like something searching for entry. And still, no rain. Word traveled faster than wind. Before the sun reached its peak, whispers filled the village. The chief had begun visiting struggling households. Some said he brought grain. Others said he brought decisions. By afternoon, a cloud of dust rose on the road. Servants. Sacks balanced on shoulders. Gold catching sunlight. Jingo stood outside his hut as the procession slowed. Amara felt her stomach turn before she understood why. Chief Adama stepped down carefully, coral beads layered across his chest, red cap firm on his head. His robe shimmered with wealth that did not belong to this dry land. He studied Jingo without haste. I hear your fields still breathe, the chief said calmly. Jingo's jaw tightened. They do. The chief smiled slightly. Good. The servants lowered the grain to the ground. The village fell silent. The chief did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply stood before Jingo's hut, gold catching sunlight, coral beads resting heavy on his chest like quiet authority. "I will take your daughter as my wife," Chief Adama said. "Your household will not starve." The words landed without force, and that made them heavier. Amara's fingers curled slowly into her palm. Jingo felt the village watching from behind doorways and cracked windows. "My daughter is not grain," Jingo replied. The chief studied him carefully. "No, she is worth more. That is why I offer more." Behind them, servants lowered sacks to the ground. The smell of grain drifted into the hut. Inside, Cato coughed. Nala shifted weakly. Darren tilted his head toward the sound of silence thickening. The chief nodded once. "Consider it." And he left the food behind. That night, the grain sat in the corner of the hut like a witness. No one touched it. Amara avoided looking at it. Cato stared at it too long. Darren said nothing. Nala's voice came thin from her mat. "Did he offer it for free?" Jingo did not answer. Outside, wind scraped across the roof. Inside, hunger scraped harder. "Father," Amara finally whispered, "we can survive without that." Her words were brave. Her eyes were afraid. Jingo looked at the sack. He imagined Cato stronger. He imagined Nala standing. He imagined rain that might never come. The lamp flickered. The hut felt smaller. Darren spoke softly into the dark. "Food that waits usually comes with a chain." No one slept well. Before dawn, Cato tried to stand again. His knees failed him. The fall was not loud, but it echoed. Nala cried out weakly. Amara rushed to lift her brother, her thin arms trembling. "Father," she said, not finishing the sentence. Jingo helped Cato upright and felt how light he had become. Too light. Outside, the sky was still empty of clouds. Inside, Jingo's thoughts were louder than prayer. He stepped outside alone. The village road was quiet, dust cold beneath his feet. He looked toward the chief's compound. For a long time, he did not move. Then he began walking. When he returned, the sun was rising. Behind him came servants. And more grain. Amara knew before he spoke. Her voice cracked for the first time. "You did not." Jingo could not meet her eyes. "I did." Amara did not cry at first. She stood very still, staring at the grain behind her father like it was already replacing her. "Tell me you did not," she whispered. Jingo's silence was the answer. The hut felt smaller than before. "Father, don't do this." She stepped toward him. "Let me find work in another village. Let me beg. Let me leave. But do not give me to him." Her almond-shaped eyes did not look childish. They looked clear. Jingo's jaw tightened. "You think I enjoy this?" "No," she said. "I think you are afraid." The word struck him. Outside, a rooster called into a dry morning. Inside, something fragile began to crack. "Amara," he said quietly, "this is the only way." She shook her head slowly. "No," she replied. "It is only the fastest way." Nala struggled upright when she heard the argument. Her body was weak, but her mind was not. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice thin but sharp. Jingo avoided her eyes. "Saving this house." "With her?" Nala demanded. Amara turned away, jaw trembling. The hut went silent except for Cato's faint breathing. Nala's eyes filled, not with tears, but with disbelief. "She is not a sack of grain," she said. "She is your blood." Jingo's shoulders stiffened. "Blood does not feed a dying son." The words hung between them. Darren turned his face toward his father. "Father," he said calmly, "some hunger ends. Some regret does not." Nala lowered back to her mat slowly. "You are choosing wrong," she whispered. Jingo felt the weight of it settle into his bones. Before the sun climbed high, Jingo walked alone. He did not tell Amara he was leaving. He did not look back. Each step toward the chief's compound felt heavier than the last. He told himself he was not selling his daughter. He told himself he was buying time. Dust rose around his ankles like accusation. At the compound gate, servants opened without question. Chief Adama sat beneath shade, gold medallion resting against embroidered fabric. "You have decided," the chief said. Jingo swallowed. "My household will receive what you promised." The chief nodded slowly. "And your daughter will be received with honor." Honor. The word tasted bitter. Jingo pressed his thumb onto the agreement cloth. When he lifted it, a faint smear of dust marked the fabric. Something permanent had been done. When Jingo returned, he did not carry pride. He carried grain. Servants followed behind him like silent witnesses. Amara stepped out of the hut slowly. Her eyes searched his face one last time, for doubt, for hesitation, for mercy. She found none. You went, she said. Yes. The word barely left him. Behind her, Nala tried to rise and failed. The sight of servants unloading grain at her doorway felt like a funeral she was forced to watch. You chose wrong, she whispered again. By evening, her fever worsened. Amara sat beside her mother, holding her hand. Mother, she said softly, it will be all right. Nala shook her head faintly. No, she breathed. Not this. Django stood in the doorway, the sun setting behind him, turning his shadow long across the hut floor. And for the first time, even the grain felt heavy. The fever did not break. It deepened. By nightfall, Nala's breathing sounded like paper tearing slowly. Amara sat beside her, counting each rise of her mother's chest as if numbers could keep her alive. Django, Nala whispered. He knelt close. You chose wrong, she said again. Not angrily, not loudly, but with the finality of someone already stepping away. Django opened his mouth, but no defense came. Cato stood in the corner, ashamed of his own weakness. Darren tilted his head toward the fading breath. Mother, Amara pleaded softly, stay. But Nala's hand loosened in hers. Her chest rose once more, then did not rise again. Outside, the night remained dry. Inside, the house became hollow, and Django felt something in him collapse without sound. The mango tree did not offer comfort. Its leaves barely moved in the dry wind as they lowered Nala into the earth. The grave was shallow, not from disrespect, but from soil hardened by drought. Django stood stiffly, watching dust fall onto the cloth that covered his wife's face. Amara did not cry. Her grief was too sharp for tears. Cato trembled beside her, unsure if he mourned his mother or what she had seen before she died. Darren spoke a quiet prayer, his voice steady. When it ended, the village dispersed quickly. Death during famine was not rare. But for Django, it felt personal. He did not kneel at the grave. He did not speak. He only stared, and the wind carried the faint smell of grain from his hut. There was no time to grieve properly. The grain remained in the corner. The agreement remained binding. Amara rose before sunrise the next morning and fetched water as if nothing had shifted. Her face was calm in a way that frightened Django. You should rest, he said. She did not look at him. There is work. Cato watched her silently. Darren tapped his stick once against the floor. The hut no longer felt like home. It felt like a place waiting to empty further. Outside, the sky was wide and indifferent. Inside, grief had not softened anyone. It had sharpened them. And Django began to understand that survival would not bring peace, only continuation. Women arrived before noon. They carried oils, beads, and fabrics too bright for a house that had just buried someone. The contrast felt cruel. Amara sat quietly while hands braided her hair into an elaborate crown. Coral beads were layered around her neck. Gold bangles slid onto her wrists. She is beautiful, one woman murmured. Amara stared forward. Beauty felt irrelevant. Django stood outside, unable to watch. When he finally stepped inside, she was almost unrecognizable, transformed into something ceremonial. For a moment, his breath caught, not because she looked radiant, but because she looked distant. Father, she said softly. He could not answer. Her eyes did not accuse him. They did something worse. They forgave him too soon. Drums sounded louder than grief. Villagers gathered, hungry eyes bright at the sight of grain distributed nearby. Chief Adama stood proudly in embroidered brocade, coral beads layered thick against his chest. Amara stood beside him, wrapped in gold and red, posture straight. Django stood apart from the crowd. Smile, someone whispered to Amara. She did not. Chief Adama placed a ring upon her finger. Applause rose. Cato bowed his head. Darren listened to the sound of celebration and said quietly, "They cheer because they are fed." Django did not hear the drums anymore. He heard only the echo of Nala's voice. You chose wrong. And as the ceremony ended, the sky remained clear. The chief's compound was large, clean, ordered. Servants moved quietly. Amara was led into a room with silk curtains and polished wood floors. The bed was wide enough to swallow her. Chief Adama entered slowly. You will lack nothing here, he said. She nodded. Nothing. Not hunger. Not comfort. But something else was missing. When he reached to touch her shoulder, she did not flinch. She did not lean in either. She simply existed. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. For the first time in her life, She had everything her family lacked, and nothing she needed. Weeks passed. Then something impossible happened. Django's fields did not die. Where other farms cracked and surrendered, his soil held moisture beneath its covering of leaves. Green pushed through dust. At first, he did not believe it. He knelt and touched the stem like it might disappear. It did not. Soon, traders from the city began to arrive. They came with trucks, scales, and desperate offers. "Name your price," one said. Django stared at the crops, swaying in stubborn life. He thought of Amara's wedding beads. He thought of Nala's grave. And he understood. The land had survived without the sacrifice. The realization was not joy. It was punishment. The city called him savior. They praised his wisdom. They paid generously. Django's hut improved quickly. New roof, stronger walls, medicine for Cato. But every coin felt heavy. When he first held wealth in his hands, he did not smile. He imagined Amara in silk. He imagined her silence. Darren spoke softly one evening. "Father, the land listened to you." Django nodded. "Yes. But did you listen to her?" The question lingered longer than applause ever could. Outside, his fields shimmered green. Inside, his house remained missing something irreplaceable. And for the first time, Django feared that the famine had not ended. It had only changed form. When Django first entered the chief's compound after gaining wealth, he carried gifts heavier than his shame. Silk cloth, gold bangles, medicine. The guards bowed now. The same man who once arrived in torn fabric now wore clean cream traditional attire, but his angular face had not softened. Amara stepped into the courtyard. She was thinner, not from hunger, from something quieter. Her coral beads rested against a collarbone more visible than before. "Are you well?" Django asked. She nodded. "Are they fed?" she replied. The question cut. "Yes," he said quickly. "Cato stands now. He walks." A pause. "That is good," she answered. He reached for her hand. She let him take it, but her fingers remained still. In that small absence of pressure, Django felt a distance larger than famine. Back home, medicine strengthened Cato. His cough softened. His steps grew steadier. One evening he stood outside the hut without support, staring at the green fields swaying gently in dusk light. Django watched him with relief that felt misplaced. "You see," Django said, "you are strong again." Cato did not smile. "Because she is not here," he replied. The words were not loud, but they struck harder than accusation. Darren tapped his stick once. "Strength bought with silence," he murmured. Django turned away. For the first time, he wished Cato had remained weak, because recovery now felt like evidence. And every improvement in the house seemed to whisper the same truth. It did not need to cost her. Django returned again to the compound, this time without gifts. Only questions. Amara was seated beneath a shaded veranda, staring into a courtyard fountain. Her reflection trembled in the water. "You are thinner," he said. "I eat," she answered. It was not untrue. It was incomplete. He sat beside her. "I can speak to him," Django offered quietly. "I can arrange more comfort." She turned her almond eyes toward him. "I am comfortable." A pause. "Father, comfort is not the same as freedom." The word lodged inside him. From inside the compound hall, distant laughter echoed, rich, unbothered. Django realized then that wealth had not made him powerful. It had made him late. And Amara's voice carried no anger now, only fatigue. Amara began eating less. Servants noticed first. Plates returned half untouched. Chief Adama observed quietly, but did not press. "She will adjust," he told a guard. But she did not. At night, she lay awake long after the compound slept. Memories returned uninvited. Her mother's last breath, her father's silence, Cato's fragile body. The walls of the compound felt polished but narrow. One evening, the chief placed a hand on her shoulder. "You lack nothing here," he said. She did not disagree, but her body leaned slightly away. And in that subtle movement, something vital continued to fade. Harvest season came. Django's fields flourished beyond expectation. Traders praised him openly now. "You saved the city," one declared. He stood among tall green stalks, wind moving through them like applause. Yet every rustle sounded like accusation. He knelt and gripped the soil. "You could have waited," he whispered to the earth. The land did not answer. Cato approached behind him. "Father, we did not know." Django nodded slowly. "No," he said, "but I should have." Above them, the sky darkened slightly. not with rain, but with gathering clouds of something unsettled. And Jingo understood. He had defeated hunger, but he had planted regret. And regret grows deeper roots than crops ever will. The servants began whispering. She barely eats. She stares at the wall. She wakes before dawn and does not sleep again. Chief Adama dismissed them at first. She will adjust, he repeated. But one evening, he entered her chamber unannounced. A tray of untouched rice sat cold. Amara sat upright on the edge of the bed, coral beads resting against a chest that had grown visibly thinner. "Why do you refuse food?" the chief asked. "I do not refuse," she replied softly. "Then eat." She lifted a small portion to her mouth. Chewed. Swallowed. Her throat tightened. She placed the bowl down. In that room of silk and polished wood, something more severe than hunger had taken hold. It was not starvation of the body. It was refusal of belonging. Back home, Darren sat outside beneath the mango tree. The air was cooler now, harvest wind moving gently. "Father," he said quietly. Jingo stopped beside him. "You are celebrated in the city." Jingo nodded without pride. "But here," Darren continued, "the house still echoes." Jingo clenched his jaw. "You think I do not know?" Darren's clouded eyes lifted toward him. "I think you knew before." The words did not rise in anger. They settled like truth. Cato stood a short distance away, listening, guilt carving new lines into his face. Jingo looked toward the green fields glowing under evening light. For the first time, he wished they had failed, because failed crops would have hurt less than this silence. One night, Amara asked for parchment. A servant brought it quickly. She sat by lamplight and began writing. Her hand moved slowly. Carefully, she wrote to her father, not accusing, not pleading, only telling him she understood. That understanding was the cruelest gift she could offer. Halfway through, her hand trembled. She imagined him reading it. She imagined his relief. Then she imagined the truth, that nothing written could undo what had been sealed. She folded the parchment, held it, then tore it quietly into pieces. The fragments fell like soft snow onto the polished floor. She did not cry. She lay down instead and stared at the ceiling until morning. Clouds formed at the edge of the horizon, not gentle ones. Heavy, dark, the kind that arrive with sound before rain. In the compound, servants secured windows. Chief Adama stood on the veranda watching the sky. Inside, Amara remained still on the bed. Her breathing had grown lighter. When thunder cracked, she did not flinch. Back in the village, Jingo stepped outside his improved hut and looked upward. The wind felt colder. Cato stood beside him. "Rain," he whispered. Jingo nodded slowly. "Yes." But the coming storm did not feel like mercy. It felt like something final, like a reckoning delayed too long. Rain began before midnight. Hard, relentless. Lightning split the sky in violent flashes. In the compound, a servant ran through corridors slick with reflected candlelight. "She cannot wake," he told the chief. Chief Adama entered her chamber. Amara lay pale against embroidered pillows. Her chest rose faintly. He sent a rider immediately. In the village, the pounding on Jingo's door felt like thunder inside wood. He opened it to a drenched messenger. "Come," the man said urgently. "She is dying." For a moment, Jingo did not move. Cato's hand tightened on his arm. Darren stood in silence. Then Jingo stepped into the storm. Not as a wealthy man, as a father running too late. Rain struck the earth like judgment. Jingo ran through mud that swallowed his sandals, lightning tearing the sky open in violent white flashes. The village path he had walked proudly during harvest now felt longer than any road he had known. He slipped once, fell to his knees, rose again. The storm soaked his cream attire until it clung to his thin frame, but he did not feel the cold. He heard only one sound inside his head. "You chose wrong." When he reached the compound gates, the guards did not stop him. They stepped aside, because even power recognizes grief. Inside, corridors shimmered with reflected lightning, and at the far end of one dim room, Amara lay still, waiting. Amara's skin was pale against embroidered pillows. The coral beads that once symbolized ceremony now looked too heavy for her thin neck. Jingo fell to his knees beside her. "Amara," he whispered. Her almond-shaped eyes opened slowly. Not angry, not accusing, only tired. He took her hand, the same hand that had once begged him. Her fingers were cold. "Father," she breathed, voice fragile as torn silk. He leaned closer. "Did they eat?" The storm thundered outside. Jingo's throat tightened. Yes, he said. They live. The city lives. A faint smile moved across her lips. Not joy. Relief. Her hand relaxed. Her eyes softened. And in that quiet release, Jingo felt something inside him tear in a way no storm could mend. Her breath left softly, almost politely, as if she did not wish to disturb anyone further. Jingo waited for the next inhale. It did not come. Outside, thunder rolled away slowly, as though the storm had taken what it came for. Chief Adama stood a short distance away, silent, his authority useless in the face of finality. Servants lowered their eyes. Jingo pressed his forehead against her hand. For the first time since the famine began, he cried, not loudly, not violently, but with the sound of a man who understands too late. The room remained vast, rich, still, and entirely empty. The city did not know. They continued praising Jingo. They continued calling him savior. But beneath the mango tree, a second grave was opened. Amara was buried beside Nala. The earth was softer now. Rain had finally come. Kato stood upright beside the grave, alive and steady. Darren held his walking stick firmly, face lifted toward the sky. Chief Adama did not attend. The village watched quietly. Jingo poured fresh grain onto the soil, the same grain he once traded her for. It scattered across the wet earth like confession. I fed them, he whispered. The wind moved through the mango leaves. And for the first time, Jingo understood. He had defeated hunger, but he had lost his home. Years passed. The fields remained fertile. The city prospered. Jingo's name was carved into stone. But he no longer attended ceremonies. He no longer stood in markets. Each harvest season, he walked alone to the mango tree. He sat between the two graves, spoke softly, listened for answers that never came. Kato eventually married. Darren continued to speak truth. Chief Adama aged quietly. But Jingo grew smaller inside. One evening, as rain began again, villagers saw him standing in the field long after dark. Not sheltering, not moving, as if waiting for the sky to undo what his hands had done. It never did. He fed a city and starved for the rest of his life. Years later, they will still praise him. Children will learn his name in markets. Officials will speak of his wisdom during drought seasons, and farmers will copy the way he covered his soil. The fields will never forget how he saved them. But every harvest season, when the wind moves through the crops, Jingo will hear something else. He will hear a whisper. Did they eat? And though the city did, though his sons survived, though the famine passed, he will never answer that question without feeling it split him open again. Because he did not trade his daughter for wealth. He traded her for fear. And fear grows faster than drought. In the end, the land forgave him. The city celebrated him. But beneath the mango tree, the earth kept the truth. He fed thousands and starved for the rest of his life.